Are you eating what you want, or are you eating what they want you to eat? Coming up, we'll explore the outside influences on you and your diet. Welcome to the Wellness Champion Podcast, sponsored by Healthy Transformation Nation. We believe that your health and wellness is determined by your own self-care more than anything else. Join us for each episode when we discover and uncover the keys to self-care in today's complex culture. We enjoy helping others discover the best ways to be well. We'll be visiting the basics for self-care and ongoing wellness that enables you to not only survive, but to thrive. Wellness Champion Podcast.
Are you eating what you want, or is it what you think you want? I'm Nikilette Walker-Bowman.
And I'm Bill Bowman. And, that's an interesting question, Nikilette, because, for many years, I thought that meat and potatoes, or as they say where I come from, meat and potatoes, meat and potatoes was a manly thing. Meat and potatoes, It's not. I mean, I guess you could say that in the general anthropology of humans that males tend to eat more protein, and there's necessity for that in nature.
Right.
But other than the protein part of it, it has nothing to do with my manliness if I eat meat and potatoes or not.
Yeah, who coined that phrase?
But I don't know. But I know that, I think a lot had to do with family influences in my life. As I was growing up, what I was taught that a man does, and a man eats meat and potatoes. Yeah. And that's the way my father was. My father, he didn't go for all those fancy vegetables and stuff. I mean, seriously, that he kind of didn't.
Right.
So, and I had learned that from him at a young age, and I kind of unlearned that later in life.
Right.
And, let's kind of dive into why that would be. Why would I need to unlearn that? I mean, there's a lot of influences in our diet. There's a lot of influences in what it is that we eat that we don't even really think about, but they're there underneath.
So true.
We connect emotionally with our food, right? With our meals.
Absolutely.
And where does that come from, Nikilette? Does it come from family? What?
What I do see around my family was that food was a big way of us gathering together. And so a lot of the food that, that was prepared by the family, we would all partake in it. And a lot of that was the meat, the potatoes as well. That's how I grew up. My family, their heritage was very much the meat and potatoes, kind of the corn beef and cabbage.
Kind of
that
the same thing that I was just talking
absolutely.
about with my family.
Right,
yeah.
Absolutely. And that was my mom's side of the family. Now, my father's side of the family was a little different because my grandmother was from Italy, so it was a lot more of the Mediterranean flair of food that came in. So I was blessed to have a little bit of a combination, but I primarily grew up with more the meat potato type of influence that came in. Yeah. And that's because of what my mom grew up with and what her mom grew up with. That's the way it was. And a lot of times back when my grandmother was growing up, there was a lot of lack of food too, because, the Depression and things were a lot more challenging back in those days. We don't have the same type of challenges today that used to happen back then. And also things that were grown to have a lot of longevity to it. So potatoes can last a long time as well. Right. So that was kind of a staple in the diet.
Yeah. And of course, we have our own thoughts on potatoes. We personally, you and I do not eat potatoes.
Correct.
They're a member of the deadly nightshade family. That's one thing that I learned about potatoes.
Yes.
Or as I said before, we say potatoes.
Potatoes.
That it's something that I've actually chosen to not have in my diet right now. But, aside from, family and cultural issues, or not issues, but cultural, your cultural background, and the influences of that on your diet, there's other things that we will be talking about too, industry and advertising.
Yes.
But to explore that familial part of it a
Yeah.
little bit more before we get into the industry and how they want to get their hooks into us, basically. Going beyond just the family, when you get into gatherings, when you're with your friends, when you're in a social situation, that's where there's a lot of influence happening that I see.
Yeah, I agree. That was a big thing for me. As a lot of you know, I had food addiction in my life, so that was very challenging for me to be in social situations, social gatherings that had food because, again, family, you get together, what do you want to eat? You're getting with your friends, what are you doing? Usually going out for a meal. I used to be in church, and so we would have big, meals together on Sundays at times, or even on Saturdays, get together for barbecues and all this stuff. So food was very much really the center focus
Yeah,
of the gatherings that I would be part of.
of course.
And because of for me, the food addiction pieces of it, it made it really difficult where I didn't feel that I could walk into that situation without, for one, judging myself, but feeling like people were watching me and judging me based off of what I was eating. Even though everyone was having it, it was there. I felt everybody was looking at me. And that was my experience. That doesn't mean everybody else was having that experience, but that was my experience at the time. So I actually didn't really like the big gatherings like that because I felt like all eyes were on me. And so, and I'm sure some people may relate to that and may have felt that way in their journey in the past, and knowing that you're not alone in that is good. But we have some resolutions. So that's the beautiful part. But what we're bringing forth today is the information that will help you have a better understanding as to maybe why you think the way you do. I know it's been a huge influence for me, what we're talking about today.
So when we're talking about the gatherings and families getting together and friends getting together, one of the things that I can recall from when I was growing up is that now I'm personally not Italian, but I had some very close friends of mine who were Italian.
Yes.
And so when I would visit my friends' homes for, family events and things like that I was invited to attend, they would always be, it was all about the food. And so I understand what you're saying about that.
Right.
And I'm not singling out Italians, but I'm just saying, hey, the Italians, they love to eat.
Absolutely.
And it's all about the food. And it would be something like, what's the matter with you? Why aren't you eating? That sort of thing. And so it kind of drills into you, even at a young age, there's something wrong with you if you're not continually eating.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
this is a message that you're receiving. You're receiving this message from when you're going out with your friends. You're receiving this message at home. You're receiving this message from your parents or grandparents or uncles and aunts.
Right.
Or and all everywhere you go. So there's one way that you are influenced outside yourself. The interesting part about that is that when it's the family influence, that's given to you at a very young age. And you are taught this by your parents or your guardians or whoever it is that's rearing you, bringing you up. And so you are being taught that this is the way it is. And you accept it because you trust this family unit, you trust this process, you trust, everything else that goes along with listening to your elders and your family and all that.
And it's what you've always known.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's what you've always known. So it's that part of you that's familiar and comfortable, easy, seems right. But yet this influence that is all those things, easy, comfortable, right, has come to you from an outside source that you've never questioned before.
I agree, because each person, even with the family stuff, even though we have the family relations and the ties and all of that stuff, we're still individuals.
Yeah.
And so we are all uniquely made, where something that you might totally feel comfortable with, like your body reacts very positively to it, my body might not. And so when we think about those types of things, that's when you get into the diets,
Yeah.
And how many people fail on diets and why they fail on diets and things like that. And it's amazing to me how I mean, I've probably done almost every diet you could possibly imagine, except for ones that came out after 2018. And it's really incredible to me how I felt like such a failure on those diets, because I was following it, I was doing it, you'd have success, but maintaining it and living it, it wasn't a lifestyle. That what the word diet actually means is lifestyle. It wasn't a lifestyle. It was a quick fix. It was a way to get me to a destination in a quick period of time, but the results weren't lasting.
I'm so glad that you brought up dieting, because that, now, when we kind of use the word diet loosely, but what dieting is, well, it's an industry. When you think about how that industry influences many of us. And remember that when you see diets coming up in your feed,
Right. Yes.
when you see diets talked about in the media, or when you see advertising for diets in magazines or on billboards or on television or on the internet, in your inbox, that's all part of an industry that is set up to make money out of dieting. That's why that's the purpose for their existence, is to make a profit, to make money.
Correct.
And so always remember that. And it's this. I don't know. You say that you have done many diets.
Correct.
And I've seen you do a few.
You have.
In the past, and of course we've left all that behind, haven't we?
Oh, well, now it's just the way that we live.
Right. It's a lifestyle. It's not a diet. We're not on a diet.
No.
I mean, being on a diet is something that people have always leaned on, I think. Well, I'm on a diet, so it does give you that little bit of a lean back. So when people do face challenges from outside sources about something that they're being offered to eat.
Correct.
Like you're at a party and someone says, "Hey, have this piece of cake. It's great." "Oh, I'm on a diet. Sorry, I can't." That's just sort of a way for a person to kind of step back from that and give that. It's almost like an excuse to not eat that that food item that's being offered to you. It's an excuse that someone is that people believe that someone else will accept and say, "Oh, okay, sure, yeah, no problem."
But the flip side, though.
Yes. Let's do the flip side.
Yeah, the flip side of that is when you're presented with that and you say, "I'm on a diet," and you're like, "Oh, I'm on a diet." There's a difference with what you're saying as far as a way to get out of it where you just don't want to. But when you're like, "Oh, I'm on a diet," it's more of like, I can't have. I'm being deprived of. And that's where I used to live from consistently, is feeling the deprivation and all of that. And that is not a place to reside for in very long at all, because I lived like I said, I lived like that a really long time. And therein lies a lot of self-judgment. Therein lies a victim mentality. Therein lies the poor me stories that come up. And then someone's asking, "Oh, then what is the diet?" And then people want to know what you're doing. And then they ask. And when in reality, you really just don't even want to have the discussion. You don't even want to engage in it. But that was like you said, the excuse, the reason that you are not having X food.
Right. And I love that you shared that about, the excuse of being on a diet to not and take on some food that you don't want to have. The other part of that is that a diet implies that it's temporary, whereas a lifestyle is your lifestyle. It's what it's your long-term, you have your long-term goals. You have the way that you want to approach your wellness. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
That's much more of a commitment, and it's also a different thing when you are facing someone face to face at a party who's offering you a piece of cake,
Right.
to go into that conversation. And so a lot of people just go easily with the other thing, but with, saying that they're on a diet. But, I challenge anyone to be confident in your lifestyle choices.
Yeah, when I'm faced with those situations today, I can go anywhere, any place, and they could have anything in front of me. And if it doesn't resonate with me, something that I would typically eat, I just don't eat it. And if I'm offered, I'm like, oh, no, thanks. I don't eat that.
Right.
And it's so easy because that's just the truth of the situation. And I actually have been shamed because of it or challenged because of that.
Yeah.
Because, well, what do you mean?
Yeah. What's wrong with you?
Yeah. Why don't you have
Right.
it?
There must be something wrong. And
I just don't want it.
yeah, I've had that same shame, the strange looks, and that's where you have to kind of lean upon your own constitution, and just realize that what somebody else thinks of me is really none of my business. It doesn't
Right.
matter to me.
And you don't have to give in to social pressures to feel
Right.
that you're being, because you don't want to feel rude and all of this stuff. And it's not really about that, because at the end of the day, what you're putting in your body, you're owning it. And if you don't want it, then don't put it in your body.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
literally
that's your
that
body.
simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, and we're talking about how the dieting is an industry.
Absolutely.
It
Yep.
is definitely an industry. I mean, just take a look around you and make note for like one day how many times you see an advertisement for a diet product. It is a huge industry, and there is money being made hand over fist to connect with people from the angle of the diet industry. But when we leave that behind, when we start ignoring the diet industry, ignoring those temporary fixes, and ignoring the messaging that comes with the advertising from the diet
Yes.
industry, then you begin to lean more on your own self-proclaimed lifestyle,
Yes.
the way that you want to live. And so the diet industry is an industry, right? I mean, we've established that. I mean, you can see that through all the advertising and all the messaging and everything that you see almost on a daily basis. I don't know what the percentage is, but probably like 20% of what I see is like about diets. So yeah, it's an industry. Other industries that involve how you are influenced about what you're eating today is going to be the drug industry and the food industry. Really interesting that there's such a synergy between food and drugs.
Absolutely.
In America, the United States, we have the Food and Drug Administration. So curious how those landed under the same roof, because the food industry, a very influential industry, I might add, influential on our governmental systems, influential on the processes that we have for creating regulations. And so so we've talked about all these different influences on us from outside ourselves on what we are eating. And, it goes everything from family to cultural things, to cultural
Advertising.
influences, to
The
the
advertising.
industries. Yes, advertising. So we have family, friends, culture, and then we have industry, which comes to us from not only from advertising, but also through family, friends, and culture.
Right.
Because the industries infiltrate that bubble around you to influence you. And they do this, I mean, they put entire teams of people on figuring out ways to influence you in that way. And so it's coming at you from advertising, from your friends, from your family, from the culture that you live in, society, the media, all these different directions. There are influences coming at you to influence what it is that you eat. And it's just, there's no wonder I mean, who can blame anyone for being influenced by that?
Yeah.
Because there are subliminal messages everywhere you go, and so it's really, unless you make a mindful commitment to look for it and find it and understand it, it's just going to keep happening to you.
Mm-hmm.
So we've explored the different ways that we are influenced outside ourselves for what we are eating. And it comes from family, friends, culture, society, and not only that, but it comes from the industries of dieting, drugs, and food. And those industries have this great way of not only throwing advertising at us, but also they have teams of people who are looking for ways to get into your sphere of influence, that bubble that you have around you where people are talking, where the things that you see on the internet, things in chat forums and places like that, to get you to fall in line with whatever plan that industry has for you at this time. So one thing that we encourage everyone to do is to just simply pay attention. Listen to what it is that's coming at you, watch for it, and make note of it. Maybe even, give yourself a challenge for like a week. Make note, or a week might be much because there's a lot coming at us. So
You could just do it in a day.
just a day, right? Just take a day and make note of all the times you see advertising or potential influencing on dieting, drugs, medications,
Yeah.
or food, any kind of food. Could be restaurants, could be, food producers, advertising on television or in magazines or billboards or wherever, and make note of that. And also, what are the kinds of things that they're talking about? Are they trying to connect with you emotionally, psychologically? Are they trying to, for example, the thing that I had in my head for so many years was that meat and potatoes was a manly kind of thing to be. That's the kind of thing that the food industry would just simply tap into to influence you in a psychological way to get you to eat whatever product it is that they're eating. So, that they're selling. Basically, take it upon yourself to just do a little of your own research and your own observation to get yourself familiar with the types of influence that comes to you from outside yourself. Yeah. So our challenge to anyone would be to, for one day or for each day this week even, take a look and make note of all the different advertisements that you see. And it might not just be on television. It could be in print or on the internet. Maybe pop-ups come up on your screen and you just click them off without even thinking about it. But make note of all the ones that are either advertising a food, a diet, or a medication. And those are all working together to influence you to eat what they want you to eat and regulate that how they want you to regulate it, and then go and be medicated according to how they want you to be medicated.
Yes.
And I say they very loosely. It's the industries.
Correct. So go to htnforyou.com and join our wellness community there. When you're going through changes and you want to implement them, it is so wonderful to have the support of other like-minded people. So come on over to htnforyou.com and join our wellness community there.